So for step 13, the gearbox, well, this should be a relatively simple step to do. We have to grease up our differential gear first, then we're going to put it back on that shaft that we just sort of did the differential test with. That's the right half, and then we're going to take our left side of the gearbox and they should click together nice and easy, and we'll have these 3 screws that are going to hold the gearbox together. So there are our 3 BA4 screws, and again, just make sure that you've matched them to the picture. And then of course we've got our differential and our 2 halves of the gearbox. So I'll set this up and we'll put it together. So first off, let's grease it up. And notice the positioning in the differential. It's not going on that way, it's going on this way. But I'm going to hold the ends and we're going to squeeze this tube and start to grease it up. Now I'm not going to put on too much because I really want to see and hope that you can get through this build without having to use more grease. So I'm happy with that. There's enough on there all the way around. So we're going to take our differential and we're going to slide it back onto there as we had when we did the differential test. The only difference is we're now going to take this side of the gearbox and this needs to fit onto this. So basically the differential gets squeezed together and then that shaft there is going to go into that hole there. So let's make sure this is all going to fit. There we go. Everything's in place. So we're going to now take our screws. We've got one up here at the top. So I'll start screwing that in. We've got another one back here. So I'm just turning it around, but I'm holding it together at the same time. Screw that in partly as well. And we'll take our last screw, and that last screw goes inside here. So put that down there. Turn this around. Now because they're all in, I'm going to start screwing this down all the way. And again, these are tapping screws, so once you get to the end, you should know that it's there. Yeah, because it can't go any farther. So I'm just going to do that last check with this last one here. Yep. So there we go. There is our finished gearbox. And I mean, I can actually hold both sides now and spin it back and forth. So again, I know the differential's fine, but it wouldn't, you know, if you waited to this step to check the differential and you couldn't spin it back and forth, you'd have to take it apart again. So it's better to just check first before doing all that. But there we go. There is our gearbox. So step 13 is complete. So now we're going to move on to step 14 and we're going to attach the motor. So for step 14, attaching the motor, Well, you can see here that we need to grab our motor. We have a motor plate that has to go on, and then we attach the pinion gear with the Allen key and the little grub screw. And you can see that from the motor plate to the end of the pinion, it needs to be 15 millimeters. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to attach this all to the gearbox, and you can see that we're going to use the screws, these two at the top and bottom, because that's what's needed for the 17-tooth pinion, which is the stock pinion that comes with the kit. So there are our two screws, our grub screw, our pinion, the motor plate. And the one thing it shows here is a sticker 20 put on there for hot motor. You can do it or not, just depends on what you want to do. I went ahead and did it, just so that it was on there. So I put it on. But anyways, we've got everything that we need, so we'll set this up and we'll put it together. So right off the bat, we need to get this rubber protective boot off the motor. And the easiest way to do that, I find, just grab your needle nose pliers, grab the tip, pull, and it's off. Easy peasy. So once that's done, and notice that you've got this open hole here. This side has an open hole, but it's also got two air vent, I guess you could say, indentations. I tend to build the kits exactly as shown, so I'm going to do it this way. So first off, we've got this motor plate, and you'll notice there's only 3 holes on the motor itself. Well, you know then that these 2 are your screw holes, because the motor plate obviously has to be screwed on. So we just need to make sure that that sits on either side. Turn the motor plate to the corresponding holes, and voila, it's on. Now the next thing, we need to put the pinion on. Well, this is what I like to do. I find it a lot easier to put the pinion into the or the grub screw into the pinion a lot easier, is actually just put this on the Allen key, and first off take it and spin it in, because that's easier, and the pinion is in there nice, so it's not coming out. I just got to back this off. I just got to make sure. Yeah. So once that grub screw is in there, we can then start putting this on. Now you'll notice that the motor shaft has a flat spot. Well, that's where we have to attach our pinion. So another thing that I like to do, just to start things off, is when you know that that's where it needs to be, I'll just keep spinning this in until it's hitting that flat. And the reason being, if you've got this down enough, it will end up turning the motor. See how I'm turning the flat spot with the pinion? So you know that the pinion is in the correct spot if you line that up with the grub screw. And that just makes it easier for then doing all of the fine-tuning work of actually trying to lock this down. So if I find a level spot, sort of, let's now see what we need to do. We need this to be 15 millimeters. So I'm going to stick that in there. I'm going to grab a ruler here, and we need this to be 15 millimeters. So there's your 10, and there's your 15 from the motor plate. So knowing that, I'm just going to turn it a little bit. Check again, and you can see that I'm bang on 15 right there. And if I take this to here just to see, because the diagram does work, you can make sure that the motor plate is lined up, and that's pretty much the 15 right there. So knowing that, and knowing that we've got our pinion on the right thing, I'm turning this around now. I want the longer end pointing out, so it's only the small part of the grub screw that's on this. and now we're going to tighten this up. Now for the pinion gear, I like to go as tight as I can with it. And I've never had an issue with the pinion pop off the motor if I do it this way. So I'm just going to do it again. Yeah. So there we go. There is our pinion on the motor. And if you wanted to do a final, just make sure that it's actually, you know, tightened up correctly, there is your 15 millimeters. So I'm good with that. So we now have our motor and pinion on together. So what do we need to do? We need to grab our gearbox, and based on how we did this, the stickers there, just the way this is done, we're now going to take this and slide it into the housing, and you'll notice that the pinion is going to end up matching up here, but let's just make sure that we've got the positioning right. We're going to have to grab a screw, grab our motor cover on the other for the other side, and in fact I'm going to, just because this is going to be easier to do, I think, is what I want to make sure of is that that's going to line up. Yes, I think I've managed to line it up and it's actually sitting in the correct hole. So I'm going to start screwing this in. No, I hadn't got it right after all. There we go. So that's the one in. Now we'll take this at the bottom hole, and that should match up. So let's see if it does. Nope, we're going to have to adjust this a bit. There we go. Okay. So now that that is in, I'm going to start tightening these up. And again, these are not tapping screws. So you're going to want to tighten it up, but don't over tighten. And there we go. There is our motor in the gearbox. Very cool. So that means step 14 is done. So we're going to now move on to step 15, and we're going to work on attaching the gearbox.